So I'm Daniel Segre. I'm not going to talk much about results. I'm going to mostly pose questions that I think are common questions to a lot of us. And I'll start by just listing some of the things I think we're trying to predict when we build flux balance models of communities. These represent organisms interacting with each other, different microbes. And for those of you that were not at last week here, much of our work has to do with trying to predict how microbes interact between each other, given what's happening within individual microbes, using largely flux balance models. And so we're trying to predict, I think, a number of different things. The abundance of the species is one of them. That's one of the data that come from ecological measurements. What is being exchanged, what type of interactions these species have. And I put interactions in quotes because I think interactions are very, defined in a very non-clear way. They could depend on the spatial structure, on the environment, the same species under the same conditions, just with different type of geographical setting could have different interactions, stability, robustness, and so on and so forth. So I'll start by mentioning something that I know is dear to Orkun, rightly, and then we discussed this yesterday, and I want to emphasize that I feel this is also a very important issue, which is what is the origin of these models and how do we standardize things. So if you typically now choose your 3 organisms that you want to model in an ecosystem level model, there is a high chance that the best models for these 3 different organisms will come from different sources. One may come from model seed, which is now being incorporated in the K-base that the Department of Energy is building in the United States, could come from the big database from Bernard Paulson's group, could come from Biopsych that is now started to build flux balance models from its databases, or it could come from many individual papers, right, that have their own nomenclature. And each of these different databases of stoichiometries will have potentially different sets of names for metabolites and so on. So this makes it very hard to build models. It's like a microbial ecology babble. And the question is, what can we do about this? And here I'm giving just some suggestions and food for thought. So first of all, I want to mention there is a tool, and people have thought about this. This is from Kostas Maranas at Penn State. He built this database called MET-RxN. I'm not sure how to read this, but it is a database that has metabolic reactions and metabolites and has a dictionary of names and synonyms to convert between models. It's not, as far as I understand, an automatic tool that will take a model from one format and transfer into a different one, but it is, I think, a very useful resource. Now, I think there are some key questions we need to ask ourselves in thinking about this problem, and I'm sure Orkun will have more thoughts, but I think this might be an interesting discussion, as he suggested to me yesterday. So whose standard should we adopt? I think that's a key question. Right? There are different standards, and I think it's always tricky when there are people and groups, and I haven't invested anything in this type of research of naming metabolites, but there are people that have. So which standard should we adopt? And I think one criterion should be extendability. New metabolites are being discovered. We're improving models. We're adding more complex molecules, such as lipopolysaccharides, glycans, lignin, and so on, that has very complex structure. And anything we do has to be open-ended so we can easily incorporate new metabolites. I think it will be very important to have converter tools because I think the old models will hang around for a while. And the other thing that I think is important, I was thinking about this earlier, that for having a practical implementation by journals, so that the journals will impose, right, that when you submit a paper, it will have to have a certain format. It's going to be a process, and there has to be a decision that at some point that is the standard format. And I think it might be useful to try and learn from what happened with sequences. For example, FASTA, right? I think I'm not a sequence person, but I imagine that that's the standard or one of the standards for submitting sequences to a database or a journal. And I think it might be useful to learn from that experience in sequence, because I don't know that it's obvious that we can just decide or propagate this idea that we need a standard to all the journals. That would be quite difficult. So I think it might be interesting to think whether, for example, killer applications like BLAST and so on in the sequence world may have played a major role in triggering this standardization. And the question is there a standard tool or model or format in flux balance analysis? And I think this is in itself a question, right? Even both in terms of getting the models to your computer and running them, and what engine you use, and what optimization software you use, and so on and so forth. And I don't know that we should have one necessarily. I think it's actually very good that there is an ecosystem of different approaches and models, and we don't want, I think the last thing we want is a very fixed tool that will not allow exploration, because I think there is a lot of room for exploration now still in doing these models. But I think this is just, again, something to think about. I'll be happy to hear your thoughts. And so going a little bit into some of the details of what I think are the questions about that we should think about when we think about ecosystem level modeling. And I think that we're seeing a shift that is already discussed in reviews and so on. So I think it's quite clear that the whole field is looking at it in this way, going from just multi-compartmental models, where you take two organisms and put them into subcompartments, a little bit like we were doing in the yeast flux balance model for mitochondria within the cytoplasm. And you can build a joint stoichiometric matrix. So these were the early flux balance models, were basically this compartmentalized models. And I think they have a lot of advantages. They're formally nice. You can do a lot of interesting things. But one tricky question is that you have to assume some objective function for the community, or say something about what you expect the community to do, because you have a single flux balance problem. You're trying to solve what is being optimized by the communities. You have to do some combination of the biomasses, or to assume some minimal production of each of the biomasses. Whatever you do, I think that you have to make some assumptions that might be good, might be bad, might be relevant, but it's not the most general way, I think, of assuming or making assumptions about a microbial ecosystem. The other thing about this type of models, in the same way as in flux balance model, you cannot predict metabolites, metabolic concentrations intracellularly. No matter what you do, they're out of the model by definition when you impose the steady state. In the same way, in this type of models, you cannot possibly predict the abundances of different species in an ecosystem. So again, that's, I think, a key aspect, since a lot of us, I think, are interested in predicting the abundances of the species. I don't think, unless some other kind of mathematical development will come from basic flux balance modeling, I think ecosystem species abundances are out of this type of modeling. So I think more and more we see development of dynamic flux balance models. And the idea there is that you don't need to assume anything about what the ecosystem is trying to do. You just take individual species. In this case, this is a rendering of our COMET simulation, which is basically a spatially distributed dynamic flux balance analysis. COMET stands for Computation of Microbial Ecosystems in Time and Space. And the idea here, as in many other, or a few other dynamic FBA community models that have been developed, the idea is that each organism will have its own growth objective, or optimization objective, which could be growth maximization. It will spread whatever metabolites are being secreted. If there is another organism nearby that can use those nutrients for its own benefit, though that other organism will take those nutrients up, grow based on its own objective, but there is no need to define an ecosystem level objective. And I think this is interesting because it opens up for a lot of ecological questions of cooperation and competition, where you can assume that each individual species has its own evolved strategy, and whatever comes out of the community interactions is an outcome of the community interaction and not some predefined assumption that we're making. And I want to spend the last, I don't know how many minutes, 5 or so, to talk about rate versus yield. So this is a topic that is very dear to me and has come up last week a little bit from Bas, and I'm sorry that he's not here, but so I mean, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I can tell you why if we have time, but I know that there is a lot of very sometimes fervid discussions on whether flux balance analysis maximizes rate or maximizes yield. What is it doing? And we had a very nice conversation with Shiri and Adam a couple of days ago over dinner, and I'm the only one responsible for what I'm going to say next, but I want to just thank them, because I think it was a very interesting discussion that led me to decide that I want to talk about this. So we actually used a lot this analogy of the car factory, which I use a lot when I teach. This is a car factory that produces cars. there are a lot of material that come in. This is obviously a very rough approximation. You could make it much more complicated, but the essence is that you have stuff coming from outside. It's been elaborated inside, and then it needs to produce cars. And you can think of fluxes as the numbers associated with what is coming in, and the rate of production of cars is something that describes how many cars the factory is producing. And then the question of rate versus yield is, given that you're trying to find somehow a balanced situation where the number of cars produced matches what is coming inside the factory, you can ask, okay, so what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to maximize, when you do your standard flux balance analysis of maximizing V growth, are you trying to maximize the rate of production of cars or the yield? That is the number of cars produced per unit time, or the number of cars produced, say, per unit engine that comes into the system. And one of the reasons this is very important is because rate and yield have very deep consequences in terms of the evolution of cooperation, and this is a paper that I think has inspired many of us, and that talks extensively about this trade-off between rate and yield. I won't go into this, but I think it is a very fundamental question for evolutionary reasons and a number of other applications. So I just want to convey one message, which I think is very important, and I'll be happy to, if anybody can show me why am I wrong. I'm wrong. I'd be happy to hear, but I don't think I am. And so I want to show numbers and equations to show you what I feel is the right way of thinking about this. So when you look at fluxes, right, they have these units typically, which is abundance of a metabolite per unit of biomass per unit time. So this would be the rate, and then you have the specific rate normalized by the biomass. So this is a rate, right? What we deal with are fluxes, they're rates. Now, when you define the objective function, the growth, actually, which doesn't have to be necessarily the objective function, this takes many different metabolites in proportions that correspond to what is found in 1 gram of biomass, and you make this special reaction that defines growth. And what are the units of this? In the same way as for the metabolites, you have the amount of biomass divided by biomass to make it as specific, and divided by time, and this is unit of 1 over time. So this is basically, again, a rate. So, and this is not just a rate, this is the classical growth rate that is defined in microbiology, right? It has unit of 1 over time. So the first conclusion is that this thing, the V growth, the growth flux, is a rate. It has units of rate. It has time. If you wanted to define a yield, you have to divide by the rate of glucose uptake, and then you'd get a yield, and the time would disappear. Now, when you do your standard flux balance analysis problem, you maximize, the most common assumption is you maximize V growth, and we can discuss at length this, but you maximize this, which is the growth rate. So flux balance technically computes a growth rate, and you couldn't do otherwise. So the reason flux balance works is that you maximize or minimize a linear combination of fluxes, which are rates, so you couldn't possibly maximize or minimize anything else that are rate. Now, this is very different. That's where I think some of the issue comes, is that this is different than saying that flux balance can correctly predict growth rates, and one could make a philosophical interlude of what does it mean to predict. And maybe we should use the word compute, because predict maybe one would think that means correctly predicting. Anyway, I'll skip this, but you see what I'm saying, right? So what is the story of fluxes? And I'm not sure I'll be able to go through all my slides, but I'll show some examples that I think give support to this, and I'll be happy to discuss later with whoever is interested. So you might be limited, right, in a typical flux balance model, let's say by glucose or oxygen, you impose these uptake rates. And one of the reasons that I think we don't like to say sometimes that flux balance can predict rates is that there may be internal constraints of kinetics and so on that we don't know. So we don't really know. We can't tell, the flux balance cannot tell us anything about these rates, but I think this is a problem of our unknown constraints, not a problem of the technical aspects of flux balance is what it does, which is still computing maximal combinations of rates. So we might be predicting the wrong growth rate, but we're still predicting rates. Obviously, right, one of the things that is another argument for why flux balance in the end gives potentially yields is that in the end, that's how the argument goes, we can have some inputs and outputs. It doesn't matter. We could multiply everything by the same factor, right, and it would be the same. If we multiply the uptake upper bound of glucose by factor 10 and everything by factor 10, we'll get growth rate larger by a factor of 10, so effectively we have only the rates, the yield. But this is not true because there are absolute scales inside most flux balance models, and if there are, and there should be, and these are the maintenance flux. So there is a maintenance flux in E. coli, I think it's of the order of 7 millimoles per gram mass per hour, and this is the leakage of ATP that is necessary for the cell to do maintenance, and this gives an absolute time scale to the problem. So it's not true that you can just multiply everything by 10 or by any number and get the same result. I had more about this, but I'll have to finish, and I'll be happy to hear people's thoughts on this, but I'll just conclude by saying that we're not done in this whole flux balance world, and we need to do much more theory and experiments. And I just want to encourage people not to think that flux balance is a perfect tool. It's something that is in development. I think we need more models, more theoretical efforts to develop this, and more experiments. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Hopefully we can get back to some of these slides, because I think there's a lot of material there to discuss. For now, we can take one question while our next speaker, David, sets up, if there is any. Okay, if not, I think we're going to come back to this at the discussion.